I'm live and you are too. We are still here, still alive. I hope you're all doing well. There's 4 of us here already. Hot dang! Let's talk. Remember what this is about. We're after your ideas. I've got a few new ones. Um, Hello, Fun Monster. Hello, Jeff Cheney. Very nice to have you back. Um, let's see. Yeah, so I listed here. I'll probably list it a couple more times in this conversation. So you remember, I've been trying to stretch this so that we actually have a real conversation where people can talk back to me, critique me, where I'm not up on this pulpit where I'm talking to you and you don't get to talk to me except by text. So for that, we'd have to go to something else, and it's Google Meet. I call it a Zoom meeting, but it's actually a Google Meet meeting. That's a free service on Google, and go there anytime. And so that would be next Sunday. So this is a Sunday right after Thanksgiving. We would meet at 11 o'clock, same as here, and we'd see who'd come. And yes, I'll continue to do this Saturday thing for now. Hello, Nils. It's nice to see you, man. You and I are going to talk sometime soon, I hope. Tuesday. We talked about talking Tuesday. So we would do the Saturday meeting as usual. And then Sunday, we would see whether people show up for that. And then in the meantime, that will alternate. Sundays, I'll do that every other Sunday as just a kind of a wide open conversation about whatever you want to talk about. And then the other Sunday would be like the Sunday we're going to have tomorrow, where we have the conversation about how to engage with people there's no talking to, how to cultivate receptivity in people who have become absolutely unreceptive. Some of my ideas this week are about that absolute unreceptivity, which is so popular these days. It's so much fun to not be curious. It's so freeing. And I have some new thoughts about that. Yes, Fun Monster, my videos are doing well, and you ain't seen half of it. I've gotten about 2 million views on Facebook, of all places. And that means a whole lot of comments. And I have become there's been times when I'm not sure what to do next. I'm thinking about doing audio podcasts. I'm thinking about different long forms. I try out different things, but these shorts are doing very well. I make no money off of them because I haven't yet ranked high enough on them. I think you have to have 1 million views, maybe on one short. I don't even know what it is, but I now have I have 4 vehicles that I'm using the shorts for. So I've got AI Donald Trump tells it like it is. That's very popular. Word to try on Trumpies. Magnificent Mike just keeps on pumping it out. And then I've got 2 new ones. One is that I simply do essays that are very short, and they're 3-minute long versions of what I would normally get long-winded about for 15 minutes or so. That's fun. That's a fun vehicle. And I've got a new one that I just put out this morning. I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this one. Hello, Michael. Nice to see you. Hello, everybody. And remember, pitch your ideas. Last week, we had a thoroughgoing engagement around veganism. Feel free to also talk about how that went down and what you thought about that whole interaction with that person. I'm trying to remember what his name was. Maybe Tony. Who came on. He might come back. I hope he does. That was because that was a real-time example of a kind of trying to connect with someone who is so enthusiastically in his own shoes he cannot step out of them to imagine how he sounds. That's my sense of it, is that any one of us can get that enthusiastic. It's like if feel proves it's real, or something like that. What's real is what I feel. Nothing feels more convincing than our feelings. And so this is a person, I did look him up a little bit. Louise did as well. We looked him up a little bit. It sounds like he's had a rougher life than I have, certainly. So this is one of the other challenges that I have. I have no sense that he was a malevolent or bullying person. There's this argument that you should never punch down. Yeah, but what if you're dealing with someone who is actually beneath you, but is claiming to be above you? It's a complication around that. So anyway, let's talk about that one. If there's any more you want to talk about, and it's guesswork. I am not claiming I finessed that one. Who knows what I did? I tried to finesse it. Um, in the meantime, that does relate to this new series I've got. So I've got these short essays, but I've got this other thing going that I just invented this week. You know how I am about thinking in stereo or in paired opposites. I'm just calling one up here to see if I can give you an example of how these work. So this is like mind candy, but it's not mind candy. It's actually mind taffy. I'm trying to get at some of the pulls we're all dealing with that just come with life. So here, try this one out. This is a short version. This is turned into a minor motion picture. Every solution is a problem. I'm deeply committed to a fundamental principle. If I'm angry at someone, it's not about them, it's about me. When I'm annoyed or irritated by someone, I need to look inward because it's not them, it's me. That's why your frustration with me doesn't bother me at all. You watch, I'm about to flip it. You're angry, annoyed, and irritated by me. That proves I don't have to listen to you at all. It's not my problem. It's on you, not me. I don't have to listen to anyone's criticism of me because I'm deeply committed to my fundamental principle. If you're bothered by me, it proves it's about you, not about me. So this kind of double-edgedness. And one thing I've discovered is that if I'm making short videos, I can make them in a way where they flip halfway through. And that's especially fun. I'm going to look. So sorry, they flip halfway through and then they flip back when the video loops. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to call these yet. They're like paradoxes to live by or paradoxes to loop by. So that'll be a fun series to do. And I don't know if people will understand what the hell I'm doing with them. But this idea of flipping it, I did one about the golden rule too, where basically I start out saying I'm really committed to the golden rule and I should accommodate everyone. And by the halfway through, I'm saying, and therefore you should accommodate me no matter what. The authority card works well on YouTube, but one-on-one it is easier and more efficient to question. Yes, but you were too. Let's see. Hold on. That was a fun one last week. Yes, but you were too. Here's what I think you're getting at something that I want to talk about. It's the authority card. Remember how I am trying to avoid the authority card. Part of that is my background, my mentorship, the tradition I come from. We don't pull rank. We don't get on our high horse. I have to be able to yank people off their high horse, but I do not want to mount their steed instead. How do I deal with that? Well, last week we had some comments from people who were saying, you're being manipulative. You're not looking at yourself. Those are moves I can't make. I don't get to do that. I don't get to talk like I'm the police who decides who is being manipulative. In fact, I had a conversation, a long and rich conversation with the person who was writing that last week on the board, and I realized that one option strategically, which I would probably err on the side of, is not to turn manipulation into a no-no. I was more inclined to say, your manipulation isn't working. If you want to manipulate me, you're going to have to do better than that. I once had a girlfriend who I would say, honey, those tricks won't work with me. I've written 15 articles about why those tricks shouldn't work. Here, let me give you an example how to manipulate me. This will work much better. It didn't go over well with her for me to do this. I was basically writing her a script for how to manipulate me better. Because in general, I am not comfortable with these loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words like manipulation. What's the difference between manipulation and persuasion? My assumption by now, having thought about those questions a while, or what's the difference between persuasion and gaslighting? Is it's mostly a question of whether you like it. If you like it, you call it persuasion. If you don't like it, you call it manipulation. I'm not comfortable with that, but that's what most people do with it. So as a result, I'm not going to play some kind of authority card where I say, you have violated some universal moral principle. The labeling thing does not satisfy me. So no, you were enthusiastic, but it came off as authoritarian. This is good. Okay, so you're saying, no, you were enthusiastic, but it came off. Okay, now, let's check this out. You say, but it came off as authoritarian. Here's where the subtlety that I'm fussing with shows up. It came off as authoritarian. You might be right that it came off. Anybody who listened to me would have thought that. Or you might be saying that in your subjective opinion, it came off as authoritarian. Now, I have to be very careful to say here, if I said to you, that's your opinion, I am not dismissing it. I'm saying, yeah, people will read it that way. Now let's look at why people would read it that way. You might have been in a similar situation. Any one of us might have, where you stood your ground, but you did it subjectively, and someone said, you're being a narcissist, you're being a bully, you're being a gaslighter. It came off as authoritarian. Okay. I deal with this one almost all the time. I mean, at least once a week, someone gets on their high horse about me getting on my high horse. And I am not saying I don't get on my high horse. I'm saying I'm watching and seemed to me he felt put upon. Good. So watch this. So I come onto a site and I'm enthusiastic about whatever I'm enthusiastic about. It could be my stuff, it could be veganism, could be Trump, could be whatever. And I come on and I think I'm being, as he described himself. He described himself as, I'm only trying to be, good. I've already introspected and I know that my intentions are good. And then out of the blue, this Jeremy guy puts upon me. He gets all put upon me. He's bullying me. This is a fundamental thing that shows up in conversation all the time. It's one of the problems with game theory, as I see it. That is, in general, people think that the other person started it. And it's extremely motivating when you do that. Think about how far MAGA has gotten by saying, oh, hell no, this is just a retaliation against the monstrous behavior that was produced first by the liberals. Hitler says that on his deathbed. He says, I was only trying to protect Germany from the Judeo-Russo conspiracy to undermine us. So, yes, conversations from the late 60s. Yes, this will show up everywhere, and I want to draw a connection. I don't think I drew it last week, but it's fascinating to me. It's been a theme for me. So I happen to be reading a recent retelling of the Greek myths. The Greek myths have always been a little elusive to me. I think it's probably the names and the quantities of players, so I have to listen to it over and over. I don't have great brain Velcro for it. And this is the second time I'm listening to Stephen Fry, who's an absolute god to me. I love this guy. Fry and Laurie. I don't know if you know his work, but look him up. He is phenomenal. Anyway, he's telling all the Greek myths, and I'm noticing how much of them have the theme of don't play God. Don't play God. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, how widespread is that? It's like the main message you get from all mythology. It's there in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of the earliest of all of these myths. It's there in the Homeric tales as well. And it's also there throughout the Old Testament. I mean, just think about it. The eating of the tree of knowledge is stealing God's thunder. And for that, you're cast out of the Garden of Eden. And you end up in the Tower of Babel, where you are trying to reach his kind of authority and you are punished for it. So don't play God has been a theme, but it has been a theme on the assumption. This is all related to what you were talking about, Fun Monster. I'm going to come around. You'll see it's going to connect right up to it. This thing about who's off-putting, who's got playing the authoritarian card, and the way in which it's recursive. That I could shame you for shaming me, for shaming you for shaming me. What I called last night a liar's paradox game of hot potato. But anyway, don't play God on the presumption that there is a God. And not only that, on the presumption that he's my God, whoever the God is that I think is the higher God. So I will go out there and I'll humble myself before some imaginary friend, name droppable ally in the sky. I'll humble myself before that Lord so I can lord it over other people. And how would I lord it? I'd say, don't play God. It means don't you dare compete with the God who is, for whom I am the messenger, right? So you need to humble yourself before my God. Think of how radically different and important that message is if it were, don't play God because there is no God. I'm totally on board for that. Don't play God because there is no God. There's nature, and there is no God higher, not even you and your whole campaign to play God. I mean, the hardest part of don't play, of letting go is God is the sense that you had some kind of connection with him. It's like finding out that um, your ally high up was fired, or something like that, or didn't exist. On this, I was thinking about the difference between addicted to objective affirmation, God, versus subjective affirmation. That's great, and that is related. Um, yes, so and in general, these days, I am thinking just more and more about how um, we are shame bailing. We are inadequacy bailing. Humans are trying to bail out that feeling as fast as possible, trying to reserve, trying to build up whatever reservoir of confidence we can. Up to a point, at some point, you might get over that, but boy, is that a driver in my life. And how much of it has come from subjective affirmation, and how that subjective affirmation is its own challenge, because so I don't get to claim that I am serving the universe's highest purpose. I can say I'm useful to someone, and then I can find out that I was actually being used by them, that they were serving me up affirmation because they were getting something from me, or that they weren't as reliable as I thought. It's way harder. The one where you rely on subjective affirmation, it's all we can do because I don't think there is a universal. I study how purpose emerges from non-purpose within nothing but a non-purposive universe. I think that purpose is real but has no ultimate or original universal purpose. I don't think the universe is trying to do anything. It could be wrong on that. It's a guess. I'm not absolute about it, but I don't see any evidence of it for the first 2/3 of the universe we know so far. So if I had to place a bet, I would place a confident bet that there's no purpose in the universe, but that I am full of purpose, and that I can explain even how my purposes emerged and how they emerged at the origins of life. Anyway, so but that, yes, you're right. It's on this. So and this also relates to the question of, okay, who's being a gaslighter? So suppose, let me see if I can pull up this hot potato thing I wrote last night. It's super simple. By the way, I'm still promoting, I want to hear your ideas, and I also am promoting that you collect your ideas. That's what this is all about. It's just a game. Where whenever I have an idea, I jot it down. I tend to do it on Facebook. I encourage you to be there if you want to see my ideas, because that's where I regurgitate them most. That's where my uh, my diarrhea, my verbal diarrhea is at its most fluent. Okay, so liar's paradox, hot potato. So you start with a liar's paradox, like be intolerant of intolerance, and then one person says you're intolerant. Well, you're intolerant of my intolerance. Well, you're intolerant of my intolerance of your intolerance. Um, so the question becomes, where do you get off? And I mean that in both ways. You've heard me say it before. There is no ultimate level of that. And that's why it's kind of like a liar's paradox. Um, shame on you. Well, shame on you for shaming me, because no one should ever shame anyone. Well, shame on you for shaming me for shaming you. You could keep on doing that going up, or you could try to get back down to the ground level, though you disagree about it. One person says, well, shame on you. And then the other person says, shame on you for shaming me. So you're not even clear what the ground level is. But this is the problem with subjective affirmation and disaffirmation, is there's no obvious place to stop. That's why I like that term, where do you get off? Because where you get off means, what conclusion do you draw? Where does the muck, the tangle stop? When you say the muck stops here, People will have different opinions about that. So, for example, the guy from last week, he could say, yeah, that guy was a bully. I went on innocently enough. I was promoting something that's good for the world, veganism, and that Jeremy guy, he was on his bully pulpit and he was very arrogant with me. And I could have a different perspective on that. And we could agree to disagree, or we could disagree and not agree about it. But my point is not about shame. It's about how to connect to the new guy. And the best way to teach him, okay, fun monster, but I've heard you talk out both sides of your mouth on this one. So I want to tickle you and invite you back into the place where you and I converge on this. Last week you were saying that. And I also appreciate you saying it because we are in different positions. You've had a different life. You've probably experienced someone pulling rank on you through the kind of bullshit credentials I have. Like, I'm a fucking PhD, so I must be right. Well, even if that hasn't happened, you've had more bosses than I've had. And so that means that in a way you can experience what it's like from this guy's perspective, perhaps better than I can. So I hear that, if I'm getting you right. This is just as a guess. But last week you also said, after we went around about this, we did a round, and you've told them all off. Yeah, told them all off has that objective sound too. So just because you told them that you don't buy it doesn't mean that you put them straight on the truth. That's not, that's at least from my perspective. Last week you said at one point towards the end of that whole exchange um, that you got to be blunt with them. So all I'm saying, Fun Monster, is the thing I keep on saying in the study group on Sundays, which is we're trying to figure out what quantity of aggression and accommodation to do. And I do not make the move you just made. I have told them off and they have become dear friends. I understand the satisfaction of claiming I have this formula, which is, let's see, I know how to connect with the new guy, the best way to teach him. I have told them off and they have become dear friends. I don't assume that formula. It might work for you always. It doesn't work for me. That's why I say repertoire, not recipe. I said bluntness is the best weapon. That's what you said. You say, okay. I don't know what you're saying here. You said, I said bluntness is the best weapon. The reason I said that was that that's what you were doing. I can't tell if you're saying I made you say that or I was trying to get you to soften a bit. Fair enough. Look, this happens a lot in my conversations. I err on the side of bluntness. Okay. And I have to compensate for that through a bunch of things, including not pulling rank. So I don't get to claim to tell people off, and I don't get to play authoritarian cards and all of that sort of stuff. I don't get to do that because I have to be able to take in what I dish out. And I am blunt. I err on that side. Now, you might think that the better move in that situation was to soften a bit. And you could give me that counsel. You could even give me that counsel in the middle of an exchange where I'm trying to corner someone and actually shame them. So if I'm trying to humiliate or wake someone up who is, you could say, look, everybody's receptive. If you just talk to them nice, they'll come around. No, I don't find that to be the case. I made an assessment of what the guy was doing, and I came up with my bet. Your bet could be different. Your bet could have worked better. I don't claim to have a formula. I claim to have a bunch of things I try, and I sure as fuck want to stay away from the idea that there's a recipe like always be soft or always be hard or always walk away. I just don't. I have no evidence that any of those formulas are surefire. Okay, that's all. I was thinking that we are addicted to the wrong type of affirmation. We need to be addicted to subjective affirmation instead, and how we can change from objective subjective. Well, I have a rule that I apply to myself, which is all truisms are half true. And if you want to get at the other half, ask yourself, why if it's so damn true, do you have to keep on saying it? that doesn't quite apply here, but here's what I want to say. Why? So it's not simply a matter of switching some control. We're talking about affirmation. We're talking about something we're highly motivated to do, to get affirmation. And so you say, well, it'd be better if people simply chose subjective affirmation. I agree. But why don't they? And I pose this question to you, Nils. I want to see if you can come up with a reason. You set aside what you think people should do, and then you look at what people do. What is the satisfaction that you'd get from fake objective affirmation as compared to subjective affirmation? To ground it out, let's try this. I have God's love. My buddy loves me. What's the difference? The palpable difference from my affirmation. Jesus loves me. My dog loves me. Jesus loves me. My mom loves me. Are they of equal value? Because if we want to get people to change from objective to subjective, we need to know what it will cost them. What will result? What's the cost benefit exchange on that? It's not enough for me to say, yeah, go subjective. And they say, okay. No, they're getting something from it. What's the difference between Trump loves me, and Trump is God? And yeah, I have friends who like me. God forgives me everything. My friends like me a lot, but it's kind of conditional with them. In a way, you're talking about the difference between unconditional affirmation and conditional. Another quote that got me thinking, in a fight, you become. Yeah. So, Michael, so here's a question about that one. Did I think you were in a room when I was bringing up exactly that point and flipping it on its head. In a fight, you become that which you hate. That could be an observation. It also could imply a prescription, which is don't fight. Don't fight because those who live by the sword die by the sword, because fighting for peace is absurd. Well, yeah, you can see. Give me the flip. I'm gonna ask you to do that, Michael. I can give you the flip. I just did, in fact. That was that quote I just read from Facebook. But what would you say is the flip on that? Yeah, so I've got two out here for you. Nils, I still want to hear what is it cost? What's the difference between the objective and the subjective? And the other one is this thing about giving the flip. I want to hear the flip. And I can give it to you again, but there it is. Where did I get my PhD? From a podunk university that's embarrassing. I got it from Union Institute and University. It was accredited. It was perfect for me because I got to put together my own committee from across universities. And the kind of stuff I was studying was, it would have been hard to find a department anywhere that would have done it. So I don't get the cred of saying that I came from Harvard or Columbia, but I do get the cred of having a committee that was phenomenal. It included the Dean of Psychology at the University College of London. It included a quite famous Berkeley / Stanford social psychologist, and it included Terrence Deacon, who at the time was teaching neuroscience and biological anthropology at Harvard. But my university was, I got it at 41, and I was grateful. And it took me only 3 years, and the program itself was fairly useless, but it gave me. I mean, you had to take a few classes from it, and they were not. I didn't think of them as very sophisticated classes, but man, I got a great committee and got the ally of my life out of that. So no, I did not go to Harvard, and I have to make that point very clear. The head of my committee was a Harvard Berkeley professor, but I didn't go to Harvard. Okay, let's see. When we fight, we lose sight of ourselves. Good. That's a big chunk of this. Let's see. Information deserts creates. I'm going to have to come back to that one. Clarify what you mean by deserts creates limited thinking. Um, uh, we can go on. We can go into that. Let me see. Hello, Snowy Owl Pepper. Let's see. Dispute. Okay. When we fight, we lose sight of ourselves. So this has been a really interesting theme. It relates to the subjectivity thing, the subjective versus objective. It relates to, in a fight, you become that which you hate, which I'm still going to tease out because I want to know, Michael, if you could just take a minute and flesh out why you pose that. It's got you thinking. I want to hear what you're thinking from it. So just to learn from it. Oh, information deserts create limited thinking. I'm going to tease that out a little bit because I actually think that limited thinking is actually what information does. We produce exformation. For me, words or sentences or ideas are like 20 questions. When I start a sentence, you don't know where I'm going with it. By the end of it, I've funneled you into limited thinking. That is, I'm trying to corner you with the thought. And I also don't think that limited thinking is a problem. I mean, I think it's a problem, but so is unlimited thinking. That's why I'm interested in what, I want to keep an open mind, but I don't want my brains to spill out. Okay, so we got a bunch of threads going here at the same time, but we can juggle these. These are fine. Okay, I want to get back to one of them here. I'm going to go back up to Nils. I want to say that there is a human appetite for completeness, for the idea that you are perma-firmed, a term I coined that makes perfect sense. It's a great term. That would be what humans would want. And so the problem with subjective affirmation is that it's not perma-firming. You can romanticize it as if it is. You can write love songs about how I'm yours forever. There's nothing you can do that would ever bother me. It's a pipe dream, but it's a pipe dream that we can play out when we think about being born again into Christianity or any of those kinds of moves where you claim I once was lost and I am permanently found. I am permanently affirmed. I have found the answer. And you hear throughout human history the drive for that kind of what we would call in logic completeness. And it's totally inconsistent. There's hypocrisy whenever you do that, of the kind we're talking about here. But when you claim that the universe is on your side, it's got your back, it's patting you on the back no matter what you do, that is the standard advantage of an objective affirmation. It's a fake objective affirmation, but it's right there. And it's certainly an easier path than being an anxious human being. It's simply easier. And I don't want, that's why I was saying, Nils, that I don't want to pretend like we can just say, yeah, do with subjective affirmation without understanding the cost of it. And yes, you and I are both very interested in how to resign ourselves to accept subjective affirmation. I read a lot of intellectual history, and I'm reading people who were as up to date as I am in my era, and were completely flipped and proven wrong on something fundamental after they were gone. And I just assumed that's how it is. So I am thriving on local temporal affirmation while knowing that it could be that I was barking up the wrong tree my whole life. That's fallibilism, which relates to something else I want to talk about, and we'll have time. Let me see where we are. Okay, so let's go. Carl Sagan, dispute on a speck of dust in the universe. Yeah, that's right. No, I am. If you mean that as a positive thing, like here we are on a speck of dust, truth emergent from disagreements among friends, I'm right with you on that. And I'm right with Sagan that he was an important influence early on. Okay, so let's see. I'm not keeping up, but let me see what we've got here. Information deserts create. I'm going to flip that. I think both are true, Shirley Crane, but I want to see both sides of it. So if you've got no information, well, we'd have to talk about what information is. But one thought that is important in my work is if I got no pushback from reality, I would have no way of knowing I exist. So if I was actually getting no information, there was nothing to interpret. If I was in a total sensory deprivation tank from the beginning of my life, yeah, my thinking would be quite limited. So that would be an information desert. Um, uh, but it's not necessarily the same thing as closed-mindedness. So, uh, yeah, so I'm just playing with your idea here. I'm not critiquing it so much as trying to think about, okay, how do I think about that? Now, information is interesting. Here's a paradox to deal with around information. The term actually means two things, and they're kind of opposites. So yesterday you liked one of my contronyms, this thing about principle and principle. Here's another contronym. So news is what's happening. So we are bothered that the newspapers don't report on things like climate change or world hunger and all of that, because that's what's happening. But that's not actually the technical definition of news that that has taken over in science. It's Shannon's information theory, which is news is surprisal. It's something you didn't expect. Okay, so if so, a Trumpist is getting information. There's also this question about, is information a term we reserve for only stuff that's true? Is there untrue information? I would argue there is. I can point to a philosopher who says that it isn't. You wouldn't simply count. If I tell you something is bullshit, that's actually not information. I don't agree with that definition. I think that because for one thing, it depends on an objective authority on what is true and what is not. Um, uh, so so I'm just trying. I want to be good with this. Now, there are two kinds of study. So there are the people who say that I do my own research and they are gathering information. But by the technical definition, it's not information. It's not surprising. What they're gathering is affirmation, confirmation that what they already believe is true. So that does create a desert or an oasis of limited thinking. And I think humans need these oases of limited thinking. That is, I can't think about everything. I will end up in a bubble whether I like it or not. But there is a question about how permeable is that bubble? And I think that's probably what you're getting at, Shirley, here, which is that if you're only getting non-surprising information, then you'll limit your thinking, which is basically, and actually, I like the ambiguity around desserts. I always get the spelling wrong. Because actually information desserts are exactly what you could say the Trumpists are enjoying. They are getting yes, you're spelling it right. I'm right. Thank you for clarifying. I get lost on that one. So anyway, but the pun is also interesting because actually information desserts, mind candy for people who need to agree with themselves, who need affirmation more than they need reality, will limit your thinking. So the desert is also the dessert. There's an advantage to being a lousy speller. By the way, I didn't go to school. I had no classes from grade 7 through 9. I had no classes. I didn't get the spelling test. I didn't get the grammar test. It's all later stuff. I have sometimes put my name down as Jeremy Sherman, PhD, GED. So anyway, okay, we did that one. Let's see. We should do that when we're being assertive. It relates to what I was saying last. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Oh, and also I want to remind you this one last thing about information, which is that if you take information as news, it is news that reduces possibilities. It actually limits thinking. it really, the way we've come down on information theory is that it's like 20 questions, or it's like the flipping of a coin, that a bit of information, technically speaking, a bit of information, a binary bit, is when you have a coin that has two possibilities and you flip it and there's information in that you've reduced it down to one actuality. That's the definition of Shannon information in information theory. It doesn't include the what it's about. It doesn't include its value. This is a fundamental thing I work on. But in the meantime, I am saying to you, Shirley, that I am creating an information desert here. I'm trying to corner you. I'm trying to corner you with my thoughts. And it's a good thing that you are not a captive audience. You don't need to, but people who are here because they want to visit the funneled places I'm going, and that would be the case in any of these kinds of explorations. Different with a fight, where you basically got dueling funnels, which is the frame bias, the frame dominance. No, look at it through my funnel. No, look at it through my funnel. But anyway, no, I'm trying to create not a desert, but an oasis in the desert. And also remember, when people put out these things, and there's been a few in here, I'm listening for the prescriptive, what it says we should do, and I am stripping off the prescriptive to see what it's actually saying. Even a word like limited thinking, there's a pejorative, it's a little loaded negative. And you may or may not have meant that, but that's what I'm doing with ideas. I take an idea that sounds profound because it's got that poetic sound about it, and it sounds like it tells you should always do this or you should always do that. And some of them are the kind that simply point to the absurdity of something, like fighting for peace is absurd, and therefore the implication is you should never fight. I don't take that implication from it. I know it sounds paradoxical, and that's the same paradox as be intolerant of intolerance. Anyway, let's see. When we're being accommodating, then we should think of others first. Well, okay, so there are some shoulds in here. I'm now reading Jeff's string here, and I might, let's see. When we fight, we lose sight of ourselves. I'm starting there. It relates to what I was saying last week about thinking about yourself first. We should do that when we're being assertive. And when we're being accommodating, then we should think of others first. Let's see. Okay, good. And let me make sure. Okay, I've followed up on the rest of it. How did you pull that off? Let's see. I don't know, but I don't know what how do you pull that off it relates to. All of this will be clarified next week when we're actually talking to each other. By the way, look at the beginning of this thread here, because I am now saying that next Sunday, I know it's after Thanksgiving, so it might be poorly attended. We'll have a lovely chat, just a few of us. But I am doing a, let's see. Yeah, how did I pull that off? I can tell you about that. But I am starting to do this we'll continue to do the YouTube live here as long as it's active. But we are a posse of people who should just be talking to each other. So I've sent you a link for the Google Meet, where I'm hoping we will get together next week. Let me just see if I'm gonna call it back up and put that up, and then we'll get to Jeff's points. Coming back up here. This is the link. It's the same link that we use for the other meeting, and I don't know how I can list this other than here, because I can't put it up on YouTube. If you wonder about this, actually, here's what I'm asking you to do. So know that it's going to be happening the Sunday after Thanksgiving at 11 o'clock at that link. And this is California time. And please email me if you're interested in that. I'm going to start to make a mailing list for it so that I can actually announce the meeting. And even if you're on the other list, send me this list, because they're two separate lists, okay? And it's private. I won't be selling your information, and I won't be charging, or it's not like that. Okay, now back to these points that Jeff is making. I've been trying to figure out this last couple of weeks the shoe shuffling I do. My inspiration for this was noticing and appreciating how effortlessly and comfortably I can play MAGA Mike. And not just play MAGA Mike, but but relate to him. I mean, I think I'm pretty convincing at him, and I think maybe part of that is that I missed school from 7th to ninth grade. Or try this out. I made one of the Donald Trump videos this week was him talking about how it burns his soul when he's around someone who has more money or power than him. Where did that come from? From my personal experience. I noticed the absurdity. I inherited millions, but when I was hanging out with a friend who had twice, three times, four times as much money as I had, it did hurt. And I thought that was absurd, but I also appreciated it. I mean, there are lots of ridiculous things that I feel wholeheartedly. I mean, that I feel viscerally. So it was not hard for me to play Trump. Okay, so what am I doing to imagine that that's actually a huge driver for Trump? And we talk about it, but there's something about having experienced it. So this is that thing where I think of empathy as putting myself in the other person's shoes, for which I have to get myself out of my shoes, and then return to my shoes for compassion, which is me remembering when I felt like them, because nothing human is foreign to me. Now, I don't expect I will ever get out of my shoes. So if I am accommodating someone, I have to relax my shoes enough to put myself in their shoes. Um, I actually have to do that also if I'm being assertive. So giving you here's how I think of it. We have these thoughts that sound kind of complete, and then you flip them back on themselves, and you discover the worm can of wonder that follows from them. So, for example, when I am being assertive with someone, I have to put myself in their shoes. I have to think about what will sting, what will hurt them. People associate empathy with sympathy and charity. I cannot afford to do that. I want to be empathic. I want to be able to put myself in anyone's shoes. I want to be able to remember when they were my shoes. But no, I couldn't possibly afford to do that if it automatically inspired sympathy and charity. So this is where this term that comes out of hostage negotiation is so important to me. Tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is the kind of thing that a torturer does. Set aside what the morality of torture, but a torturer has to figure out what is going to cause the most excruciating pain to the person they are out to hurt. They have to actually put themselves in the other person's shoes. They have to engage in a kind of empathy in order to cause the suffering they want to do. So I don't want to do the sympathy and charity thing for all. That doesn't work for me. But this is so kindness or accommodation of everyone, no one does it. People talk like they do it, but that's lip service, or that they should do it. Nobody does that. You can't accommodate everyone. We're busy disaccommodating all sorts of people right now. Okay, so how do you do that dance? How do you do the dance we're talking about? I think, Jeff, that you have the seed of an idea that blossoms out into some confusion about whose shoes to be in when you're dealing with someone. How much to be in the other person's shoes? How much, for example, should I have been in that vegan's shoes? How much was I? Um, how much should I take his word? Remember, this is a guy who was saying, look, what we need to do is we need to look at our own behavior, and I've looked at my behavior and it's all virtuous. He kept on saying, I'm just trying to do this. Okay. So what part of him am I empathizing with? I'm probably empathizing most with the part of him that needs that affirmation. I'm not empathizing to where I actually agree with him that he's looked at himself and he's got a clean bill of health. I mean, I have inoculated myself against, but my intentions are good. Don't they count for everything? That no longer works on me. Okay, let's see where we go. So this is what we do. This is what I do with my ideas. I'm teasing them out. I'm always folding them back in on themselves to see what comes out next. And I always end up in these infinite loop hierarchical worm cans of wonder. And so it's futile for me to get to a complete answer. Not going to happen. I don't get that absolute objective affirmation I might want. but I find it a fruitful exercise in futility to keep on that. Um, Good. I'm working it back and forth. That's what I'm talking about. And if you could be saying it, I think that applies to both what you started with, which is putting yourself in their shoes, in your shoes, um, and it also applies to what we were just doing here. Okay. Uh, okay. Let's see. Here we go. So let's see. How did I pull that off? A quick story. I think I've told it before. Goes without saying. Bears repeating. I had 7 years of yeshiva. I was an incredibly late bloomer. Like, I have a recording of my dad describing me as the runt of my family. There were 4 boys, and I was definitely weird, um, and really slow in school. And they had me in the wrong school for me, which was an Orthodox Jewish school, because my dad was enthusiastic about it. And he kept me in it even though my grades were failing. And then at one point, my dad was beginning to be influenced by the counterculture, and I heard about a school called a Summerhill School. These were popular in the 60s. There weren't many of them, but they became kind of famous. If you took an education degree back then, you would have heard about Summerhill. Summerhill was a school out of England where it's more like a community than a school. Classes were available to anyone. But they were strictly optional. They were not required. There were teachers around who would be happy to help you with anything you want to pursue. But the idea was that if you left kids to their own devices, they would follow their nose and get interested in good things. And it happened for me. It happened for most of us. It was actually a very effective schooling system for the likes of us. We were mostly wayward kids. Uh, we had a reunion a few years ago. One of them had gone off to jail. One of them had become one of the chief animators for the Simpsons show. One of them had made millions in disabled dog devices. I mean, there were various people. There were photographers, artists, and a lot of them come out of there. But no, I asked my dad if I could go, and he said, sure. There was a way in which my dad was busy with his own life and was happy to put me someplace else. And so I went off to a boarding school, and it was quite formative for me. I have good friends from those days. I have good mentors from those days. But no, I didn't attend classes, and I didn't take any of the prerequisites. And then I came out of that and went to a public school in Mill Valley, California, and got straight A's. So I don't know what that means. I have tended to suspect that the school in Mill Valley in the 1970s, I graduated in 74, was actually kind of loose. But I also threw myself into it because I had found my own. I was no longer drinking from an unappetizing fire hose. I was following my nose. I was interested. And little by little, I got more and more interested and less feeling obligated to study so that I could become someone of status or get a job, but more and more just eaten up by my own curiosity, to where by 45, I noticed that I had 4 or 5 life-size questions that would carry me through. And that's why I retain pretty well, is that I'm not just reading. I'm answering questions. There are things that I'm curious about. Okay, I feel like well, that's biological background for what it's worth. Okay, so let's see. We're saying putting yourself in someone else's shoes and acting it out used to be called psychodrama. Corey, that's been back on my mind. Thank you for bringing that up. It's really useful, and I also think it's rhetorically phenomenal. I'm dealing with people who, I mean, it would be standard across people, but we're dealing with some extremes among the Trumpists who are people who will not look at themselves. And this relates, I want to connect it up to the idea I was just talking about playing God when there is a God versus playing God when there isn't a God. To me, this has been a theme in my thinking about narcissists for the longest time, is that narcissists, you understand there's a paradox there, which is that they named after a guy who couldn't stop looking at himself, and you can't get a narcissist to look at themselves. What are they doing? I think they're splitting their personality in a way that it's quite the teamwork, quite the alignment. So one half of them is the God who is always right, righteous, and mighty. And the other half of them is God's ruthless, merciless, um, dirty fighting defender. So this is just an interesting to me way of looking at what's going on with a narcissist. It helps explain why they are such high horse prudes and such why they are such dirty fighters. It's exactly what you'd get with holy war. Holy war is an oxymoron that captures this well. Holy, I am the God I envision myself to be. War, anybody who attacks me deserves to be ruined. That's what you would get. And that's related to this thing. Don't play God. So basically, you're God and God's messenger. So don't play God. Shame on you for playing God. I represent God. See that problem? Okay. So let's see. Let's see. That relates to what you were saying. So psychodrama, the kind of thing I'm doing with MAGA Mike, when I'm putting words into Trump's mouth, it's also me calmly exhibiting, basically holding a mirror up to a Trumpist and trying to do it in a way that isn't a distorted mirror for me to get more likes or laughs. I'm trying to be them as clearly as I can. I mean, I'm not exactly sure why I'm doing this thing, but I know it feels right to me where I'm playing it right on the edge. It's not exactly parody. I know I'm playing it on the edge because I confuse the hell out of people. And they often end up apologizing, figuring out what I am. I say, don't apologize. I played it on the edge. I wanted it right on the edge. One guy writes to me and says, should I retract my insult that I threw at you, MAGA Mike? You know, when I thought you were MAGA Mike, really? Oh, that was no, that's exactly no, it's fine. I'm tricking people by doing this. It's a deliberate trick. Okay, so let's see. Um, uh, so the power of psychodrama for putting yourself in other people's shoes and for them seeing how they look to you um, is important. Somehow this week, this relates to the vegan guy. Um, there was a time when I wanted to tell someone, yeah, I don't think you understand how what you're doing feels to me. That's not the wording for it. It's more like, I see you making a bid for credibility, but it's backfiring with me. It's not working. It's this thing where you kind of step out, you step out to comment on how someone is coming across to you. Once again, I'm not going to pull rank. I'm not going to do that thing where I say whatever it was that Fun Monster set up here, which was something like it came across as, because I'm super fussy about keeping that subjective thing in there. I don't get to say, yeah, what your rhetoric wouldn't work on anyone. It should be obvious to any clear-thinking human being that you're blowing smoke up your ass. I don't get to do that. I can only talk from my own subjective thing. I am gonna call you Paula. I just didn't want to blow your cover in case you needed to. Paula, nice to have you here. Okay, so let's see. Let's see. Um, let's see. MAGA Mike is the practice dummy I deal with on involuntary exposure. On a involuntary exposure for me. William, nice to meet you here. And MAGA Mike is the practice dummy I deal with on and so I think what you're saying is involuntary exposure, meaning that you are up against Trumpists. Is that what you mean? That is, you're involuntarily exposed to such people? Um, yeah, it's all interesting. Let me know more about that if that's what you think. What's the biggest mistake I've made this month? I can't remember. I can't remember one that felt big to me. If you gave me the year, I could certainly tell you about some that felt big. Um, I played something on the edge this last week that might end up feeling like a mistake, but that's what happens with who I am. Oh, it happened twice. And this relates to my personality and where it fits and where it doesn't fit. There were two friends this week, both of them quite close, who I posed questions to. And this will relate to what Paula was maybe calling me on around the guy last week, Tony or whatever his name was. I will ask questions about someone's MO and like what they're doing overall. I'll ask people to think about their own thinking, and I'll do it pretty casually. And I'll be doing it in a way that I have I I'm tr I don't tend to do small talk. I don't stay in the comfort zone. I don't accommodate that way. I'm trying to tease out how intimate I can get with someone by posing questions, and some people really appreciate those questions, and some people mostly appreciate them, and then they feel like I'm way up in their private experience, and they don't wanna think about it. So these are two people who are dear to me, um, not because we have these kind of conversations, they're dear for other reasons. They're practically relatives. One is a relative, and an important relative to me. But they didn't wanna talk. And it was interesting how they responded to not wanting to talk. They lashed out. Now I've had this experience many times in my life where someone will lash out and they will find reasons, but my guess, subjective, is that they're having a reaction and they're finding reasons, they're grabbing reasons out of the air that justify their reaction. That is something I said slammed them deep into their shoes and the feeling of themselves and discomfort in their own skin, and then they just start blurting stuff. But in both of these in one of these cases, it was blurting that I'm horrible company because I make people cry. This is my son said this to me. He said, many's the time I've seen people walk away from conversation with you crying. Um, this is not my wayward son. This is a son who I admire and appreciate a lot. So maybe that was the biggest mistake of the week. Um, I didn't ask him. I think it's just that my sense of it is that when you with family, friends, relatives, ex-partners, there will be eggshells and landmines. There just will be, and you got to figure out where they are and stay away from them. So live and learn. I realized not to ask. I was just asking a question about financial future stuff, how he's thinking about it. I hadn't have opinion about it, but it really didn't sit well with him. And live and learn. So that was a mistake. Um, the other one was really interesting, and uh, and I mostly handled it the way I wanted. It was someone who told me that my question was tone deaf to them, and then said some things back to me that were kind of uh, scornful. And I wrote back several times and didn't send all the things I sent. I wrote some things and then didn't send them. Anyway, there's some ideas. Apparently, I do make mistakes, and those were some. And yet, to me, that's the same issue I'm dealing with. I've got clients who adore me for asking those questions. I've got friends who adore me for asking those questions. I will tend to ask them. I'm incredibly nosy and mouthy, and not only just mouthy, but I'm willing to talk about all sorts of things that are most people would find too awkward. I think I have shared it with you before. There's a negative role model I keep in mind for this. I'm gonna see if I can call it up here to send to you as a link. There's a song by Gilbert and Sullivan that in the version that I like, there's a guy who looks like a grotesque version of me, and it nails what's wrong with the kind of person I am. I'm going to call up the lyrics. Um, uh, uh, the theme of it is uh, and though see everything I can, disagreeable man. Hold on a second. Let's see, the disagreeable man. Okay. If you give me your attention, I will tell you what I am. I'm a genuine philanthropist. All other kinds are sham. Each little fault of temper and each social defect in my erring fellow creatures I endeavor to correct. To all their little weaknesses I open people's eyes, and little plans to snub the self-sufficient I devise. I love my fellow creatures. I do all the good I can. Yet everybody says I'm such a disagreeable man, and I can't think why. It's such a great, it's a great song. He goes on to say things like, I can tell a woman's age in half a minute, and I do. So he tells them, so that's the air. I err on that side by temperament, by mischief, by whatever. And yeah, no, it backfires some. And I try to curb it. There were times in my life when I thought I could maybe cauterize that out of me. Not going to happen. No, I ended up being this guy. And it also relates to this. I think these are tough times and we have to be way kinder with each other because this is the touchy 20s. And I would argue the opposite, which is these are really difficult times and we have to be more honest with each other. And my audience is small because I'm going to be more honest than kind. And that's, here's the thing, here's the thing. I can afford it. And I feel an obligation to not just demand kindness from other people because I can afford it. I should be able to withstand more. I have a safer life than most. Most people can't afford to be as honest as I am. And I got to keep on saying over and over, honesty is uh, not truth. That's the point I'm making to Paula. You can have an honest opinion about that I am playing the authority card or that it backfired, all of that. It's not truth. I can have an opinion the opposite. It's not truth. Those are just our honest opinions. So when people say, I love Trump because he tells it like it is, or, Trump is honest, which means that he's got the truth. That is not my assumption. My honesty is in no way guaranteed to be truth. And I don't believe in this idea that everybody has their own truth or their own reality. We all have our own interpretations, but we don't have our own truth. Okay, let's see what we've got. LKJA Kaja is extremely nosy, but I haven't heard much philosophy behind it. So I'm wondering what drives these questions because, first of all, I tell them happily enough. I think that's my safety, is that I don't have to worry about my mishaps of the last week reflecting badly on me and me getting fired or something like that. But at the same time, uh, that's not what this is about. This is about thinking together. I guess what I'll tell you about this is my best story I have about meeting a girlfriend or wife. I could tell a wonderful story about it where the woman who popped my cherry when I was 14 decades later wanted me to meet a friend of hers. And it turned out to be this woman that I had fancied at the gym. She wanted me to connect her up to Berkeley community. Turned out to be this stunning woman who was FDR's great-granddaughter and a brilliant, just so much fun. So she set me up. But that's not the story I want to talk about, actually. I want to say something else. There are these that relates to that. There are these big, sudden addictions, love at first sight, leaps of faith. I made one 3 years ago. I bought a property in Mexico. I thought my eyes were open. They weren't. I regret that decision for a number of reasons. But it's like love at first sight. And the rush, the sense of the attraction, the born again feeling, the I once was lost, but now I'm found, the red pill. And I would say that in my life, there's been more of that around women or partners than there has about certainly spirituality or religious ideas. I know plenty of people who just take a headlong dive, just a head dive into some aha that feels like permanent affirmation. What I call I once was lost, but now I'm blind. Um, and those are really expensive decisions. They have been in my life. Every time I've fallen for a partner and then thrown all in, um, there's a kind of optimism that I don't trust anymore. And that's why I haven't been partnered or dating or any of that for 11 years. That and, reduced appetite for it. But also a sense that I do better when my romantic impulses, that urge to surge to merge that I used to have around partners, I prefer to do that in fiction. I don't trust it in real life. And besides, I'm busy in real life. That was part of the problem with Mexico for me, was that I'm busy. I'm actually doing this. These ideas are what I live for right now. So if I take on a project like Mexico, or uh, uh, it- you know, it, those are encumbrances. If the idea of having a partner at this point is absurd, because it would become, to speak back to Shirley's point, it's an encumbrance. I would have to meet their information standards. As when you're with a partner, when you're living at that degree of intimacy, the risk of disappointing or frustrating or irritating each other is so high in both directions. And so, no, I wouldn't do it at that point. Speak on being gregarious. Um, Not garrulous. You're talking about being gregarious. I think it relates to the confidence thing. Here, this is one thought on it. If this is what you mean, make sure that I understand your points. And if I start babbling in a direction that you didn't mean by your question or comment, let me know. We'll be able to resolve all of this next week if we get together on where you can talk too, because I don't want to go off in the wrong direction. But here's the thing about gregarious. Gregarious depends on confidence. I It's easier to walk into a room where you feel like you're not at risk of being um, subordinated, humiliated, humbled. Um, it's very much tied in with this appetite for confidence. So I have been trying to get as clear as possible on what that appetite is. I've been calling it an appetite for affirmation or reassurance. That implies an external source of it. And I think that confidence is more the point. Whatever you get your confidence from, everybody's got their confidence currencies. That's my sense of it these days. And that we don't want to admit that they are our confidence currencies. So, for example, for me, having arm candy trophy wife partners was a confidence currency. Being religious is a confidence currency. Having an idea that you promote is a confidence currency. It's the one I rely on most, and my ideas are mostly about how to get more ideas. They're not like one idea, but when the guy came on last week and was doing that thing about veganism, I'm assuming that being a crusader for veganism was a crucial confidence currency for him. One way to think about it is that he had something to come into the room with. He enters this room. I don't know how he found me. Maybe he does this every week. He goes out and finds lives and enters them. Well, if you don't have a confidence currency, if you don't have something you're promoting that you believe in because it believes in you, it makes you higher status to be out there promoting veganism or whatever, Christianity, whatever, MMT, look you, any of those things. And I'm not knocking them because I have my confidence currencies too. But if you don't have them, you're not going to feel very gregarious. It's like, what are you bringing to the show and tell so that you can show yourself that so that you can tell yourself that you're a good show. Uh, this is a fascinating thing about the Trumpists. I mean, I think a lot of these people were shy before they became trolls. And part of that is that they can do it anonymously and all that, but part of it is that they have a formula for playing right, that pretending they're right. So why are they so damn gregarious? Basically because of the, hey, I'm keeping my okay, darling, thank you for that. And we can still talk about it sometime if you ever want my opinion, but there's no need for my opinion because what the fuck do I know? about monetary policy. It's not an area where I focus much. But anyway, I have long drawn a parallel between Trump trolls or trolls of any sort and exhibitionists. So think about why an exhibitionist is willing to do that. Let's set aside whatever hormonal, perverted, whatever their background, their psychology. Why would you feel okay about doing that if every time you did it, you were disappointed in the results? Your shyness would take over and you wouldn't be able to continue to do it. My assumption is that there's a sadomasochistic thrill in it that makes them a winner no matter how it turns out. Um, so they, uh, so they sidle up with you as if they want a conversation. That's what an exhibitionist would do, or a Trump troll. That's a parallel I'm drawing, and I'm tying it into gregariousness. This is a kind of gregariousness. It's not one that I find pleasing to encounter, but it's there. So they sidle up as if they want a conversation. As soon as they got your attention, as soon as you've seen your receptivity, they open their trench coat and they show off their stiff little confidence currency, whatever it is. And the only reason they are gregarious enough to do that is because they have a formula that makes it feel like a victory no matter how you respond. So how would you respond to an exhibitionist who do that? Well, you could run away. What's the the exhibitionist or the Trump troll says, ha ha, that loser, he's too weak. He can't handle the truth, the power of what I showed off to him. He's intimidated by me. That's a win. How about if he scolds you? Um, if the response is scolding the exhibitionist or the troll, shame on you. You're not being moral. You're being manipulative, whatever like that. Well, you can turn that into a win too. It's not hard to do that. You simply say, uh, "Oh, you're such a prude. You're such a school mom. You're not my daddy. I'm rebelling against daddy. I'm a maverick. I'm a punk. I'm whatever." You can do something like that. And then if the person tries to talk you down from it, like they stay reasonable, it's kind of like sucker, haha, made you look. Um, there's other variations on it. And there is going to be some uh, titillation on being scolded. Uh, being humiliated can be its own fun, and one version of that, one simple version. I'm not claiming to speak to the entire range of things going on. I never do anything for just one reason, never has just one effect. It's way more complicated what I'm describing. But one part of being scolded is you're getting attention. Any attention is good. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about, said Oscar Wilde. Okay. 2 cents. You better get my 2 cents soon because the penny's about to be retired. Um, but I'll give you my 2 cents. We'll get that conversation going. All right, we're winding up here, and I'm sure that I have covered all the ground you wanted to. Here, I'm going to go back to my advertisement for those of us on here. So the Sunday the 30th at 11 o'clock, I am inviting you to come to this address. Let me see if I can put it up here. Um, oh, here we go. Here we go. Come to this address at 11 o'clock California time next Sunday the 30th. I have no other way to communicate this to you. That is, you're not on a mailing list yet. So come to that address and we can talk about whatever the fuck you want. You could get together between now and then and plan and stage an intervention with me. Jeremy, you ignorant slut. So you could do that next week. I would welcome it. It'd be fine. It's fine. It's good to get to get your hearing on this. Let's see. Yes, I'm going to respond on that. So that's pulled out the most interesting reaction. First of all, a lot of people spit anger, and I have to try to figure out whether they're spitting anger at the Donald Trump or at me for putting it up. And I'm getting both. There was a fascinating encounter last week. So let's 2 weeks ago, Michael, you probably heard about this, but I'm gonna mention it here. So we've got this buddy who's part of the study group on how to talk to people there's no talking to, or how to humbly humble or humiliate Trumpists. And he's fascinating because he's got a whole following of survivalists, most of them Trump supporters. He was invited to speak at a Proud Boy thing. This is because he had a National Geographic reality TV show for a while where he played a survivalist. And he decided to take those Trump videos and show them to a bunch of Trumpists who know him and respect him. So he's got all these Trumpists who respect him, and he's fascinating. He's trying to figure out how to engage with them. And he's former Marines. He shows them to them. So these are some of the most interesting reactions. I wasn't there for them, but they all said, that's Trump owning the libs. So he didn't tell them that they were fake AI videos. And they said, that's Trump owning the libs. So they read what I was doing, whereas actually owning the Trumpists. And they simply saw him talking honestly and bluntly and assumed that he was on their side. One of them came back a week later and said, no, I looked into it. Those videos are made by the deep state. Mostly, though, what I'm getting is people who are saying, this is AI. And I'm saying, well, yeah, that's right. It is AI. It says so right on it. Trump would never be this honest. But this is also where I got into this whole thing about don't play God. Because a lot of the people who are responding to those videos are furious at Trump and throwing the Bible at him. Uh, I'm in a deep state. How about that? But I'm not the deep state. If I was a deep state, my hands would be too tied to say the things I say. But anyway, these are people who are saying Trump is playing God. He needs to bow down to the real God. And this is a tension I have had to deal with throughout my work. I am on the side that says, that is, I can make two opposite arguments. One is we need to get back to the kind of humbling that happens when we recognize that there is a spiritual world that is higher than us, a religious world, that there is God, and that if we could just get back to Jesus-like compassion, we would be able to sober up and get out of the problems we're in. I have several friends, good friends, who are plowing that row. That's the row they hoe. And I'm going the other way. I could totally make their argument. I can make an argument for them and they might be right. One way I would make that argument is to say there's very little evidence that humans become sane when they become atheists as a society. And there is a counter to this, which is that Europe has actually, in general, been saner since they dropped all their theology. And the United States is, at least I would say at this point, the theological humbling dog don't hunt. It's not actually working that well. And my general sense is that we have used up the Earth's carrying capacity for self-flattering bullshit about God and theology and spirituality and all of these unspoken currencies. My Facebook is Jeremy Sherman, and I've got a bunch of other sites where I'm getting many more hits. But I'm here, and really, if you're willing to sit through this crap with me, you should at least be willing to sit through my Facebook, because there you can just skim right over it. If you're on Facebook, please come join me there, and then please comment and all that. Let's keep the conversation going there. So anyway, I'm saying we've used up the Earth's carrying capacity, like it or not, we've used it up. We can't actually afford to be doing that romantic fictionalizing of the supernatural world anymore. And at the same time, the demand for it is going to go way up because we've used up the Earth's carrying capacity for that kind of self-flattering bullshit. We are down to raw reality, which is going to bite us in the ass, and people will not put up with that without going spiritual. So I'm quite a bind about that one, but I know where my row is, which is I speak with respect about the that confidence currency, the way I think of it is that I am trying to demote the highfalutin confidence currencies like religion to an elevated level for all of them. It's why I will say, uh, "Oh yeah, no, I get it. You go to church. I play music and pretend that I'm good. Um, I masturbate. To me, it's the same thing, or I play music, or I have my ideas, or whatever. But I don't want to treat it as though it's some my escapism is superior to yours. That that's something I don't want to do. And then on this week, I'm also thinking about whether there would be a metric for how quickly someone ends up having the urge to escape. Um, I don't know if there could be a metric for this, but how dissociative is someone? How likely is it if you corner them, they will rush off to another they will rush off to an escapism to avoid it. I think, yeah, I'll give you this example because I was talking this week about I was talking just now about this kind of flailing that happens. I've mentioned this before, but it's an interesting example. So remember that for a while I had peace out, my friend, and I'll be back I hope to see you again. I chanced into this buddy relationship with a Nobel Prize winning poet in literature. Um, uh, we were very different, but I was her best bud in California for the last few years of her life. And at one point, she asked me about my work um, on the origins of life, the work I do with Terry Deacon. All of that. I start to explain it. And she got fucking livid. She got livid. Got flustered and she started attacking me. We were in a fancy restaurant in Berkeley and she started attacking me on every possible front. It was quite amazing. And I just let her run. Part of this relationship, there was a certain deference I had for this 80-year-old um, who was a famous poet. I mean, the Nobel Prize was she had won Pulitzer, National Book Award. I mean, she was really the opposite of me. I've never won any awards. But that's that kind of flustered that any of us can get into, where we're just pulling out our ass any reason um, why we've been wronged. And she did that for a while, and I was calm about it. She was always a little bit cranky and bossy with me. She would kind of pull rank, and understandably so. I mean, it's a very rare Nobel Prize winner who remains curious. Um, I mean, you can see why that would be hard. And also, I didn't realize how much I was stepping into landmines. She was a lyric poet. She said when she settled down about all of this, the settling down was fascinating how it happened. Um, I let her go for 5 or 10 minutes about just everything wrong with me, like I never listened to her, which was just nonsense, and I think she knew it was nonsense, but she was just flustered. And then I said, "Do you think that any of your friends might have an opinion about you, a critical opinion about you the way you've just described for me?" And then she went into um, a monologue about how, yes, of course they do, but they are decent enough not to share it with me. And I could see that even as she was saying that, she could hear the inconsistency, that she had just said to me all these things that she was now saying, yeah, but you shouldn't share. She calmed down and we realized, no, I'd stepped into something that she didn't. I mean, I wouldn't have known. She's a lyric poet. She considers it a fundamental moral violation to try to figure out what the actual fuck we are. She lives in the world of phenomenology. Phenomenology is where the deepest truth is feeling. She was a master of the subtle description of the subtle expression of feeling. But she did not want to understand what we were. That was not part of her world. And I was trespassing without noticing it. It was sweet how it all went. She got it. She could see her own triggeredness in it. Um, She was good that way. She was good at seeing that. And we had these great exchanges. I trusted her. I trusted her even when she gave me rations of shit. We would always come around to have a conversation about it where we both would learn something about our divine incompatibility. We were such different people. Bless her heart. Her name was Louise Glick, if you ever want to look her up. She's not a poet I resonate with that much. That was the interesting thing too. I'm not a fan of lyric poetry as much as stuff that I call romantic-cynical. Okay, if I haven't worn you out, good Lord. Thank you for being here. I hope to see some of you. I'll be back here next Saturday just like this. You don't have to come to both. You don't have to come to anything I do. I am strictly optional. No captive audiences ever. And but next Sunday I will be here as well for the Google Meet. You've got the email address. You've got the link for it. You've got my email address. I am going to ask you um, to get in touch if you want to be on an email list for that conversation. And remember, it's not a replacement for the psychoproctology study group, how to engage with people there's no talking to. This is an additional, I'm adding this on. Okay, sweethearts, thank you for being here. I also have another assignment for you. Think at least one new idea to you and write it down before you fucking lose it. You get 30 seconds. And then bring it. Bring it. My ideas are lots of fun for me, and my ideas are fun for you maybe. But this is mostly about you getting to a place where you're as generative as I feel. Whether you like what I generate or not is a separate question. But God, is there a confidence currency in just keep on thinking it up a notch? Your answers becoming the springboards to the next question. I'm trying to get you addicted to that high because it's so much fucking fun. And I think it's one of the best uses of a discretionary time in your life. It's just taking careful notes, trying to take better notes on what this all is. All right, I'll see you guys.